a BET News special. Here again, your host, Angela Rye.
Welcome back. Washington Post journalist Danielle Douglas Gabriel is still with us, and we are now joined by another rising star in Congress, Representative Jahana Hayes of Connecticut, who is a former school teacher and National Teacher of the Year. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to focus this part of our show on two terms we hear all the time: predatory lending and for-profit colleges. Danielle, let me first start with you. What do those two terms mean, and why should we be paying attention to them?
Predatory lending, very broadly, means there are certain lenders out there that will kind of saddle you with onerous terms, high interest rates for debt that they know that you probably can't afford to repay. Sometimes in the private market, you see that. There are a lot of schools, particularly for-profit schools, that would have in-house lending programs where the school would be doing the lending, and they would sometimes come to a student mid-year and say things like, well, you're not going to be able to stay into this class unless you take out this extra money, but don't worry, it's actually really a scholarship, but turns out it was actually a loan. And I think the problem that we're seeing is that there's not a lot of regulation around for-profit colleges. There used to be. This administration has done its best in order to strip out a lot of those regulations. So the kind of accountability measures that would ensure that students weren't facing certain onerous behavior or certain predatory behavior is no longer in place.
Congresswoman Hayes, we know Education Secretary Betsy DeVos just made it more difficult for federal student loan borrowers to cancel their debt on the ground that their college defrauded them. The move is projected to save taxpayers more than $11 billion over the next decade, but is it even worth it?
No, absolutely not. This administration, specifically this Secretary of Education, is not a friend of education. She has over and over again stripped away the rights and protections. And to your last point, when you said it'll save the country billions of dollars, I myself have over $100,000 in student loan debt. And when people say, I heard the young man in the first block talk about, did I make the right choice? You know, don't I get to dream too? Mm-hmm. Don't I get to pursue a higher education? I'm the first in my family to ever go to college, first to graduate. Went to a community college, four-year institution, and then in order to be a teacher, had to pursue a master's degree. But this idea that only certain schools are reserved for certain people, don't I get to dream? There's a responsibility of our education secretary and our Department of Education to protect the student. Where does that happen? And this administration is not doing that.
Well, speaking of leaders, absolutely, yeah. Speaking of leaders who will protect students and graduates, from that, you have a policy announcement that you want to make on the show. What is that announcement?
Yes, Pell Grant Restoration Act. Currently, schools that have been found to defraud students, there is some debt relief that you can apply for and be eligible for. But even if the loan is forgiven, you don't get your Pell Grant eligibility restored. Right now, you only have 12 full-time semesters of Pell Grant eligibility. So if you've spent 6 of them at a predatory school, even if the loan is forgiven, you've lost 6 full-time semesters of eligibility. I think that once the loan is forgiven, you should get that eligibility back. Because all I want is a chance, just the same level playing field as everyone else.
That's amazing. And thank you so much for doing that and for being an advocate, even when the administration won't be.
That's all right, but that's why we're here.
Yeah,
separate
absolutely.
but co-equal branches of government.
Absolutely. Thank goodness for that. So we have another student question in the audience from Maria. Maria, where are you?
Hi, so my name is Maria Filippo. I'm a recent graduate of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and I currently owe over $42,000. So if I had known the full financial implications of my choice to attend a 4-year institution, I would have chosen another path towards matriculation, such as attending community college first. So my question for you is, using the legislature, what plans are in place, if any, to make financial literacy a mandatory part of the student loan process?
And Danielle, just to you, whose responsibility is it to educate students on loans and student loan debt?
Right now, no one's, to be honest. You know, it would be nice if it started at the high school level. It would be nice if it was a mandatory part before people were to apply to even fill out the FAFSA, to do some kind of counseling or some kind of workshop. But that isn't quite in place. There are certain states that have state programs and state workshops. There are some schools that take it upon themselves to do so. But for the most part, a lot of students don't find out the full extent of what is before them until that exit interview when you're graduating.
Or until that first bill comes.
Yes.
Witness.
Period,
Or-
6-month period.
But, or, because I've heard it over and over, I could have made different choices, or I could have done, or we can just operate in a space where there's transparency and you, as a student, can expect that you will not be preyed upon. Or we can make sure that the tuition that you're paying matches the education that you're getting. Or we can have a government that regulates these types of programs. The idea that at 17 years old, all I wanted to be was a teacher. All I wanted to do was go to school. So this idea that you have to come with all of that just to get an education, that's just not reasonable.
I know we have another student question from Adam. Adam, where are you? Adam, yes.
Hi, I'm Adam Jefferson. Representative Haid, my question is for you. Recently graduated from the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale a few years back. I was able to get some of my loans forgiven, but I still owe $20,000 in debt, and I have to repay that. I, along with a few of my other classmates, are wondering how your legislation is going to be able to help us, especially when we were promised jobs that did not happen and are not going to happen for people of our background.
I have a little bit of a different take on loan repayment. I think that we should have up to $50,000 repaid. I think that we should have some loan forgiveness, that private loans should be handled in the same way as public loans, that you should be able to refinance those loans, and if there is some predatory lending in place, that the federal government, more specifically, the Department of Education, should protect you and all students from that type of practice.
Absolutely. Congresswoman Hayes and Danielle, thank you all so much. We have to take a quick break.